And next up we have Reese, who I believe is going to do some poetry. Can you please give her a round of applause?
I'm going to sit to do this. This is sort of a long poem. I kind of need to read it. My grandfather died on Monday, and I tried to write down everything I could remember about him. Gregorian chant. We both liked Gregorian chant. My mother says he had a gorgeous voice before the emphysema. He used to sing in church choirs in Latin. I think that was why he lamented Vatican II. He served in the Air Force. All he remembered of France was months of mud. They laid down cardboard to walk from tent to tent. The Frenchmen had a huge vat of wine that they only let Frenchmen drink from. Was it Greenland? It was so cold and the snow so deep that when someone left the barracks to go to the next barracks, they would tie a rope around his waist, and if he didn't report from the next barracks in 10 minutes, they'd send a rescue team out after him. Of Libya, he only remembered heat and hate. In his memories, he never married his judgments. Things just were what they were. He didn't covet what they meant to him or what they didn't. In France, I went into a candy store and bought him a big bag of hard candies for a couple of euros. I knew he liked hard caramels. I guessed on the rest. In Burkina Faso, Central West Africa, I didn't know what to get him, so I didn't get anything. I keep writing about him in the present tense, and then I have to go back to change the verbs to past. When he was 10 and living in Detroit, he was chased home and beaten up by a group of black kids. That's what he said justified the way he felt about black people still. He got kicked out of Sunday school repeatedly for asking various blasphemous questions. He liked to listen to the three tenors and to books on tape. He was legally blind. He refused to use a white cane and he never learned Braille. My mother was in kindergarten when he got into the accident. The three others in his carpool died. He, the driver, survived mostly. He lost some eyesight. Later, glaucoma took the rest. My mother screamed when he got home from the hospital. When he was 18, he fell in love with a girl who was 13. They married when he got back from the war 4 years later. He flew planes over Korea. She was a Catholic schoolgirl. When the nuns found out she was dating him, and about to marry, and about to have a child, they kicked her out of school. They wouldn't give her the diploma. Their first child was mentally and physically handicapped. They cared for him at home until he was 10, when they finally had to admit they couldn't do it anymore. They sent him to a group home and brought him home on holidays and went to visit him on his birthday. 3 more children followed, healthy. He worked at a phone company and put phones together. He would smuggle phone parts home in his lunchbox. There was a phone in every room in the house. There was a phone right next to the toilet. He worked overtime as often as possible so they could get by. They lived in Garden City because at least it wasn't Detroit. The neighborhood got bad over the years, he said. He thought the people across the street were selling drugs. Whenever he missed his carpool and his wife had to drive him to work, the whole family had to pile in the car because he thought no one was safe at home alone. He did not go to his son's wedding because his son's soon-to-be bride was already pregnant. Later, he apologized for this. When my parents were dating and everyone came together on leftovers night, Thursdays, he would sit at the head of the table and make some ridiculous assertion like, "The sky is green," just to start an argument, get people heated, and make them prove themselves. When I turned 16, he told me he wanted to buy me a dress. I chose a black dress with red trim running from the waist and circling the knees. It was the first time I felt like a woman. In September 8 years ago, his wife died suddenly. Best friend and lover and companion. He called her Ma. She went into the hospital one day with a pain in the stomach, and 2 weeks later, 3 strokes later, she was gone. My mother tried to help him move on, press him to move on, but he never seemed sure after that September if he still wanted to be living. One Christmas, I decided that my gift would be visit him once a month, even though I was living in Ohio. The way my grandma died, I didn't want him to go without knowing him. He lived alone in their condo. They had moved there to be close to my parents. He always offered coffee and cookies when I visited. I usually took the coffee. I usually brought something baked. Coffee cake or cookies, his favorite recipe, Nestle Toll House chocolate chip. That is the only recipe I ever use. Sitting at his kitchen table, we would talk about my mother and how she worried about me and how she didn't like my boyfriend and about history and race and politics and morality and God. He was always willing to change his mind, or at least he could shrug when he wasn't and ask if I wanted another cup of coffee. He would tell me the same stories or he would tell me different ones. I remember France and Libya and Greenland and Detroit and how he was Catholic because he was afraid of not knowing. Once at dinner with my parents, I asked him why there had to be an afterlife, and he said he believed because he was too afraid to not know. And Grandma had to be somewhere. He told me over and over he had done the best he could for his family and that was all he could do. He said it like he was adding things up. Most of the time when I hugged him goodbye, he said I felt too thin. Later I didn't go every month. There was gas money to worry about and I was busy, very busy. I don't remember when I last saw him. A few years ago he had a pacemaker put in to zap his heart back on if it stopped. The doctors told him then he had to stop smoking or it would kill him. They tried the nicotine patch and the new shot and everything. One afternoon when I came to see him, I saw him smoking through the screen door before he knew I was there. My mother posted notes on neighbors' doors asking them not to buy him cigarettes. He was in the hospital again and again, his lungs shutting down. They found cigarettes hiding in the pockets of a leather coat hanging in the closet and underneath things in drawers. The last time he was in the hospital, they gave him an oxygen tank. He called panicked one night when the oxygen tank came unplugged and he couldn't see to fix it. My mother tried for years to get him to come live with them. The loneliness was killing him. On Thanksgiving, he called to say he wasn't coming to dinner. He hadn't slept the night before. I called and said, "I'm kind of mad at you for not coming. Couldn't you sleep now before dinner?" And he said no, he couldn't sleep during the day. He apologized. "Okay, I love you," I said. He said, "I love you too, gal." Mom called to say he had fallen. Fell once the night before and bruised up his face but didn't call. Fell that day and was on the floor when she got there, but that time he had called the ambulance. She said he would be fine, they were just taking him in to see if there was any internal damage. I remembered the bag of candies from France. I had forgotten to bring them to Thanksgiving. I figured I would give them for Christmas instead. My parents bought him a CD for Christmas, a young woman opera singer who turned the Rolling Stones and the Beatles into opera. My dad thought it would be funny. I had just gotten out of class when Mom called. She said, "It's Grandpa. He's gone. There was so much internal damage and he didn't want to be kept alive on machines and he's gone." I cried. I said, "But I haven't given him the candy from France yet." I sat in a car with a boyfriend my mother doesn't like, and we talked about death until we were too cold to stay in the car anymore. I'd been studying Buddhism, the reality of emptiness and uncertainty, and with this death I saw it all. The absurdity of that everyday sense we have that things are solid and meaningful. And I thought of all the things I was supposed to do this week and how death in this society becomes one more thing to add to the calendar to squeeze between classes and work shifts, bills and groceries. In Burkina Faso, when someone dies, everyone knows. The whole village is there, and surrounding villages too. It is absurd to me that here, my apartment is wedged between two others, and on both sides of me they don't know my grandfather is gone.